the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
Yeah, I like it. Matt Green, transitioning here a little bit. We had SEC Media Days in Dallas this past week. Seemed like it was a lot of fun watching different interviews and a lot of folks jumping onto different shows and listen. I was tuned into different content and different people talking, and it was interesting. Everyone's feeling optimistic. Like, this is the optimistic season where everyone feels like, hey, this could be our year. If this goes right here, optimism is just nice. There's a lot of positivity right now all across the SEC, outside of maybe Vanderbilt fans. It's pretty optimistic all across the board before the games get started. I thought what was most interesting here with the SEC media picks, now we have, it's weird seeing 16 and weird seeing Texas and Oklahoma. That's going to take some getting used to here. But I have some gripe here, Matt Green. I have some gripe. And I think I've touched on this before. And it's something that I think college football, specifically SEC analysts, are going to struggle with Tennessee all year long. And it's something that's going to drive me nuts all year long. It's part of the reason why I predicted Tennessee to go 10-2. You were on this podcast. You can validate my exact game wins and losses turning out to be exactly right. And that before the 2022 season happened, my reasoning, rationale for it. And a lot of folks were on the fence where they were like, oh, if it goes right, 8-4, 9-3. No one was just going to go, hey, if they have the best offense in the like, they could have the best offense, but I still just don't feel good enough about putting them at 10-2, 11-1, that kind of range. History might be repeating itself here, Matt Green, a little bit, where I'm seeing every like smart college football analyst, writer, fan be excited about Nico Iamaleava. Everyone I'm seeing is just like, man, I just can't wait to watch Nico play. I think he's going to be the one. Everything I'm hearing, Nico's going to be awesome. I think Nico's going to be a Heisman finalist. I think Nico's going to be right there, one of the best in the conference. But then we're going to put Tennessee at 7, like right there in the middle of the pack of the SEC. Whoa, man, James Pearce. He's the best defensive lineman. And then we have Cole Kubelik talking about Tennessee as the best defensive line in the SEC this year. Tennessee, I think he had them as a top 5 offensive line in the conference this year. If Tennessee has one of the best offensive lines, the best defensive line, maybe even the best quarterback, upside, like he can be the best quarterback in the conference, how are you still all collectively putting Tennessee at number 7? Why is everyone so scared to just like put the wins there? Like, if you believe all of this to be true about Tennessee, you've already seen them go 10-2 with a less deep team. And look, I love Hendon Hooker to death. I think Jalen Hyatt was a special player in the slot for Tennessee. And I think it's going to be hard to replicate that kind of speed and what he did. But you can't have one without the other. And I feel like I'm taking crazy pills when I'm seeing this over and over again, Matt Green, because I'm like, you can't have one without the other. Like, if Tennessee is all of those things, and we know how important the trenches are, and we know how important the quarterback play is to success in this sport, Tennessee is going to win double-digit games this year. If Nico is that guy, they're winning double-digit games again. They're going to be in the top 4 in the conference. Like, offense wins out. Look at how this conference goes. Like, offense is the number one way to move up the top of this conference. Like, we know it's an offensively driven sport now. Yeah, like the Georgia in the world, and like when you get to the finals of the playoffs, like that matters. You saw Ohio State. They had to make the adjustment to Jim Knowles, and that was huge for them. The defense was great last year, but the reason they didn't make that leap last year, guess what? Kyle McCord was not the guy. The offense struggled. They weren't legit. They lost to Michigan. They don't go to the CFP. The year prior, CJ Stroud, Marvin Harrison, everybody, obviously they're in the playoff. Things are a little bit different. The point being, if you believe Tennessee's offense is going to be one of the best in the country, if you believe their offensive line, if they can stay healthy, is going to be one of the best in the country, if you believe their defensive line and their edge rusher is the best in the country, I don't know how we're still doing 7th. How are we still putting Mizzou in front of them? How are we putting LSU, who lost everybody, in front of them? How are we still putting so many of these schools in front of Tennessee right now? I don't get it, Matt Green. I don't think you can have one without the other. Am I taking crazy pills here?
Well, the one thing I'll say is no one's necessarily predicting that Nico is the best quarterback in the SEC right now. Like, it's more of he's the 5-star shiny new toy that everyone wants to see, and he could be amazing. James Pearce is like, yeah, right now this guy's like the best pass rusher in the SEC, and this defensive line was very improved last year, and they could be even better again this year. So like the defense was significantly better in 2023 than it was in 2022, but it was the offense that wasn't as good. And so you do still have a first-year starting quarterback, even if he does have all the potential in the world. There is still some question marks, I think, around Tennessee's just overall 2024 expectations. And Missouri, I think baked in with the Missouri thing is their schedule, because it's low-key a pretty favorable schedule. I think at Alabama, is it at Alabama or is it at home?
I think that one's at
I have
Alabama.
to look at it. But like that's the most difficult game on their schedule. And it's not that we're discounting how good Alabama is going to be, but I think 2024, if there's ever a year that you would like to play at Alabama, it's going to be 2024, because it's a transition year. They lost a lot to the portal. Like, you have a feeling once Kalen DeBoer gets this thing back up and going, like Alabama's going to improve. So 2024, Alabama could be the best team in the country. Like, we don't know, but Missouri is used to just having a ceiling kind of on what they can do, because they get matched up with someone like Georgia in the East. So I think their schedule is part of, I think, them being ahead of Tennessee in the projections.
That's fine. But LSU, Tennessee beat them 2 years ago. I think Tennessee is still in a better spot than LSU. LSU's replacing a Heisman quarterback.
2 years ago. That's forever ago.
It was on the road. I'm just saying, like, Heupel 1-0 against Brian Kelly in the SEC on the road. I think right now you can't put LSU ahead of Tennessee coming into this year. I just don't think you can. And then Ole Miss, I get. I think Ole Miss, all the firepower's there. I don't really have a problem with that one. But I think Missouri and LSU, to me, I don't think they have the ceiling that Tennessee does. If you believe Tennessee has the best defensive line in the SEC, the highest upside quarterback, and a top 3, top 5 at worst healthy offensive line. Like, I think that's a recipe for tremendous success in this sport. I just do. So
I mean, as long as we're talking about other results, like past results, like Missouri did, kind of beat the brakes off Tennessee a year ago. Like Missouri,
and Tennessee beat the brakes off them 2 years ago, like at home. Like,
but what's more relevant, last year or 2 years ago?
Well, it's last year. I mean, the offense, like you talked about, it was a road game, and like we'll see. We saw what happened when Tennessee's offense was back to normal under Heupel and what they did to Mizzou. Like, if right now, if you put them on a neutral site game, I think Tennessee would beat Missouri based on these two teams. I think Tennessee would beat them.
I'm really disappointed we're not getting Tennessee, Missouri in 2024.
And Tennessee, South Carolina. I mean, the fact that we're not getting both.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know. I would love to get Missouri on the regular season schedule, but I don't know. My thing is, folks, you can't have both without the other. So, like, I need someone. I guess I'll do it again. I guess I'll do it on July 21st, 2024, Matt Green. Tennessee's winning 10 plus games again in the regular season. Like, Tennessee, if they are healthy, if specifically the trenches, if they remain healthy, they're going to win 10 plus games. Nico is that good, and the offensive and defensive line are that good across the board. Like, I'm here. I'm just doing it. Like, folks, they're going to be a top 3 finish in the SEC.
So if Nico is that good, I mean, that's just a huge if. I don't think it's
a huge if. It's a huge if. Sellers at South Carolina being good. Brock Vandagriff being good at Kentucky. Those are huge, like, I don't know, maybe. The 5-star number 1 overall player in his class 2 years ago is not like a huge what if. Like, I don't think that's...
Vandagriff was like a 5-star like 3 years ago. So,
but we haven't seen it. Like, he's really done nothing. We saw Nico play really well in the bowl game against the top 10 defense. Like, we've seen at least some of it, and there's a pedigree. Like, there is a lot... I mean, Brock was not the number 1 quarterback in his class. Like, there's a good... it's a good track record.
Let's not act like Nico just balled out on Iowa. Like, it wasn't it was... He had some moments, but it wasn't just all smooth sailings in that game by any means. But it's one game. It's the bowl game. Like, bowl games are weird these days. I don't know what Iowa's roster was looking like. Maybe they had no one sitting out. But I think Caleb Williams was the number 1 quarterback, in fairness, in Vandagriff's class, and he's been behind.
How did Caleb Williams turn out in college?
But that's what I'm saying. So he's just behind Caleb Williams. So maybe he's the number 2 quarterback, but that's because the number 1 is the guy who was number 1 pick of the draft. Just the same way he's sitting behind Stetson Bennett and then Carson Beck. Like, Carson Beck is also potentially the number 1 pick of the draft. So just because he's been behind those guys, like, I agree. I'm not like projecting Brock Vandegrift is going to like be some Heisman candidate or anything, but it's interesting that we're not saying that at all about this former 5-star. But Nico, who we also haven't really seen play, is like, no, this guy's the guy. He's going to win the Heisman this year.
You sound scared, Matt Green. You're a little nervous about Nico Iamaleava coming to Athens here in November. A little nervous, it sounds like, Matt Green.
I mean, he's one of the bigger X factors in the SEC this year because he could be average and show a lot of potential. Like you think of someone like Matthew Stafford as a true freshman, like yeah, he showed a lot of signs, but he also threw a bunch of interceptions too. So you just never really know what you're getting with a first-year starter. He obviously is a sophomore, but he is still a first-year starter, and he could be a superstar. We really don't know. But I feel like it is interesting. I feel like Tennessee fans are already convinced that he is the guy.
I think I'm going to trust Josh Heupel and Nico Iamaleava. I think it's
Should
just
we
a
trust
worthy
Josh
bet.
Heupel? He was leaving Joe Milton in there last year.
Joe won 8 games.
See, that's the one thing. That's the one criticism I have of the Heupel tenure to this point is not seeing Nico for any meaningful games a year ago. Because it's one thing when you're not
look at the
playing,
freshman. The only 5-star freshman who did anything was Dante Moore, and he struggled. He passed I think his completion percentage was around 50% at UCLA. You don't see that much anymore.
But think about 2018 Georgia when you had Jake Fromm that just previously played in the national championship, and then in 2018, I don't know. There's revisionist history about how mediocre Fromm was. 2018, Fromm was a baller. Like he was one of the best quarterbacks, one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the country that year. And you still heard all this about Justin Fields putting him in the game, and that's when the quarterback was playing really well. So when Joe Milton is not playing well, I can't imagine why you didn't see meaningful snaps from Nico a year ago. And maybe that means he just really wasn't ready. And if he really wasn't ready last year, it's hard for me to say, okay, he's going to be a Heisman finalist this year. Like that's just a big swing. I don't know. He could show a lot of improvement in 1 year, but I don't know. That's the one thing that makes me a little cautious on Nico.
I don't know, man. I feel pretty good about it. Top 3 in the 2021 class was Drake May, Caleb Williams, Quinn Ewers, Sam Heward was in that group. You throw in, let's see, I'm keeping going here. Bryce Young, 2020, DJU, obviously not great. The 2020 class was weird, but number 1 overall, Bryce Young. Obviously, I've talked about Nico being
5-star quarterbacks pan out and not pan out all the time. So it's like you never know.
You never know, but you still feel pretty good about it. It's a good gamble. I would say good gamble overall. Speaking of,
but yeah, if people had him second team, if they had him like second team All SEC and they're picking Tennessee 7th, then I'm with you. But I feel like there is still a question mark, and I think people are afraid to maybe say Tennessee's actually going to be the real deal. Because I mean, we didn't even say everybody. Like Georgia had 165 of the first place votes. Texas had 27, Alabama with 12, and then Ole Miss with 4. And I think everyone kind of agrees on those top 4. But then after that, it's kind of, I think that's where you expect Tennessee to be the head of that group.
Well, can I throw this at you? Because I don't think it's going to be chalk like this. So of the 3, Matt Green, because I don't think Ole Miss belongs in that yet. We'll have to see if Lane Kiffin can prove that. They did well in the portal again. Let's just see. Let me see Lane Kiffin getting the SEC title game with Ole Miss. And it's not a Lane Kiffin thing. Lane Kiffin's awesome. I'm pro Lane Kiffin. It's more of an Ole Miss in the history of Ole Miss thing. Like I understand the back-to-back double-digit win seasons, but I need to see Ole Miss make that final leap as a program before I can throw them in with the Bamas, the Texases, and the Georgias. Of those 3, though, Matt Green, who do you think is the most likely not to live up to the hype going into this year? Bama, Texas, or Georgia?
That's a good question because, like, obviously the recruiting that Alabama's doing right now, like this is not stuff that's going to impact the 2024 team. But I feel like it's giving Kalen DeBoer and like people confidence in the administration, if you will. So I feel
nicely
like
done,
Alabama,
nephew. The Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.